Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Singer's Toolbox. Today, guys, it's going to be an interesting episode. This is more of a toolbox episode in that I got a whole set of questions from my friend Amanda Lynn, and I kind of want to go through for everybody this big question of addition. Which edition do I buy? Why do I buy it? Do I need multiple editions of the same score? I want to try to demystify this for everybody and kind of break down how my library works. Hopefully we'll be able to help you guys figure out what's worth it, what's not. Should I save the money for the big score? Should I buy the cheaper score now? Let's take a look, shall we? All right, everybody, so let's get started on this. First off, a caveat. I am no expert when it comes to editions or anything like that. I've just been around the block a couple of times and have, whatever advice I have, I'm going to try to distill this down for you guys. Another thing, this video is probably going to be pretty long because I'm addressing several questions here that I was sent. So use the timestamps in the description. They'll help you navigate here. But let's start with the first question. To me, the hardest part about learning a roll is not the roll itself, but the score. Being on budget, is it better to look for a cheaper score to learn what you can, and then when you have the money, fill in the gaps with a different score? Or how do you know which editions are better than others and why? If a company doesn't respond to you on what score they're using, how do you make the decision to choose? So let's unpack a little bit of this here, okay? First off, let's work backwards. If a company doesn't respond to you for what score to use, look, that's not your responsibility for one thing. Whatever score you have, you use that until they tell you any different. And if that score is really expensive, I mean, look, honestly, guys, you should be contacting that company and they should be helping you get a copy, whether it's a scan or something, because look, it's your decision what score you want to buy for a production, and it's also the company's responsibility to tell you what they're using. That's the no-brainer. But but I also get it, because I've definitely been in productions where you don't get that information until the conductor or the director is like, oh, didn't anyone tell you? So I can totally understand where that frustration is coming from. But as far as we're working backwards here. As far as how you can tell which scores are better than others, I'm gonna give you the exact advice that I was given when I started singing. Talk to your colleagues. Okay? This is not about all of the research in the world or anything like that. Talk to your colleagues. Example. I pulled an example for you guys. So I pretty early on when I switched to tenor, I had a great opportunity to do a show. Okay, really excited because there's tons of parts for everybody. It was a great show. This show happens to be The Tales of Hoffmann. Okay, love this show. Definitely one of my favorite operas of all time. It's an incredible piece. Okay, this is actually all tabbed out from when I did it for, what was it? I did all the servant roles and then Nathaniel in the beginning, so this is all tabbed out from when I did that. But anyway, so I didn't know that there was such a thing as this score right here, which is the Alcor edition of Tales of Hoffmann. Now, why is this useful, you might say? Why can't I just use this? Now, something to remember, most productions you're going to do in the US of this production, of this show, unless they tell you otherwise, buy the Schirmer. Now, I'm making a huge video on this eventually of a survivor's guide, what are the top scores that you're probably going to, or the top shows where you're probably going to have to buy multiple editions of scores. That's going to be in a video down the pipe. But I wanted to start with this because this kind of gets a little complicated, right? Especially with French operas, right? So, if you're into a Tales of Hoffmann, buy this score, all right? It's okay. The Schirmer score is completely usable for this, okay? Where you might want this is, if you happen to see this in a bookstore or online and someone doesn't know what they have and they're selling it cheap, buy it. I think I bought this... Where did I buy this? Probably not in a bookstore. I actually think I got this on eBay. you got to look out for these, right? If you find this and it is under $50, I would buy it, because this score easily goes for what, 70 or 80 bucks, probably more at this point, because this is a very used edition for like like A and B companies will use this, especially like for my mezzos out there. This edition is the one that has the violin aria. Okay, so not to go too far off on a tangent, but that's definitely an example of like, which score should I buy? That's a very ambiguous question. But what I do want to get to here, and kind of getting to like the beginning of that question, is cheaper scores, like which one should I buy? Again, and I'll probably be a little bit more concrete by the end of this video, but I want to start by saying that these are all very ambiguous questions because different scores have different purposes. And sometimes you're going to be given stuff by your company that's going to seem kind of antithetical to the whole, like, I need to have the superior edition kind of mentality to all of this. Like, as an example, I actually pulled a whole set here, and I like to make fun of this all the time for people who have talk sheet music with me. I usually bring this up as a great example. I've pulled my entire collection of Fledermaus scores. This is my entire collection of Fledermaus scores, and I'm going to go through really quick and explain to you why it makes sense to have all of these, even though you probably don't need all of them, but why it makes sense. So, from the bottom here, or really the top, this is technically an Urtext edition. That means that it's been researched, and that, like, it really should be the be-all, end-all of Fledermaus editions, right? The problem here is that Fledermaus is one of these operas that can be done in many different combinations, okay? Really, the most typical are you doing it German, meaning like German singing, German dialogue? Are you doing it English, with English lyrics and English dialogue, which gets really hairy, and we'll talk about that in a second? Or are you doing it German music, English dialogue, which again gets hairy because which libretto are you using for the script, right? So let's break this down. This score, I ended up getting, I think I got this like in a mass sale of scores or something. I don't remember. I definitely didn't buy this online. I got this because I was doing the Martina Arroyo program. I think I might have already had this in the collection, but they were using this Urtext edition for that show. We did do the German dialogue. We all studied German that summer, and it was great. But this is the only time in my many, I've lost count, productions that I've done Fledermaus, the only time I've used that score. Okay? The next score here, I've used this one a bunch. This is the Calmus edition of Die Fledermaus. I used this Calmus edition when I did, let me see. I think the first time I used this was for New York Lyric Opera Theater, way back in the day. All right, I think I might have played Falke in this. I'm not sure, but we used all the English dialogue that was in here because it's German on one side, English on the other. I think this is based on some kind of Urtext edition, like some kind of like previous plate of Fledermaus. So, but there's like so many printings of Fledermaus, which one are you going to use? So this one was useful for that production. I've also used it for other productions. This is the Calmus edition. This edition I have used so many times, but for with the dialogue, I've only used this the one time. I used this one for Tri-Cities Opera. This is the Tri-Cities Opera production copy that they gave everyone in a file. I printed it out. I got it bound. This is all marked for, I think, for Blint and for Alfred. Yeah. The Alfred I had been looking at, I didn't get cast in. I played Mr. Blint in this production. And, yeah, it was pretty awesome. But, yeah, I only really used this for the Tri-Cities production. Next one here. The Dover edition of Die Fledermaus. I have also done this show with this dialogue. This I've only used a couple of times, probably more than most though. I think I also used this one for a New York Lyric Opera Theater production, for like some summer stuff that they were doing. I think this might have been the score, but yeah, super useful. Used it several times. I kind of like how Dover does their bindings. These hold up really, really well when you abuse the crap out of it. So definitely worth getting your hands on a copy because they're cheap. This is an older Deflator Mouse edition. I think I might have just gotten this, like someone gave it to me when I was buying a bunch of music, but I've definitely used this before, especially because I believe this has the original Schirmer dialogue in it. So, which is really rare, by the way. The Schirmer editions of Deflator Mouse don't usually publish all the dialogue inside, so that's why I have this one. It's worked out. I've used it a couple of times. Let me save that. This one was my very first Fledermaus score. I used this when I did a production and then a revival in DC. We used a set of dialogue. I think the dialogue I printed out and it's in here somewhere. Actually, it might even just be like put in the pages. But I think that they also wrote their own script for this one too, or they did a variation on the Schirmer dialogue. I don't know. But this is my very first copy of Deflator Mouse. It's had a lot of love and it's starting to fall apart. Let's see. This one here. Oh, this one I got from a sale from someone in New Jersey. This just was here. But, you know, anytime I get different English translations, I usually hold on to them because it's Fledermaus, and if I ever do this in the future and I'm the one that's in control of the dialogue, I want some dialogue options, especially if there's some funny jokes. So I hold on to this one. Haven't used this one. I think I just kept it just because I think this might be a different printing or something on top of having different English dialogue. And then, okay, then this one, this one is a Boozy and Hawks edition of Deflator Mouse. This one, it's a different setting. They even called it a different name. They called it Rosalinda, right? I don't know if anyone's seen this before. I just thought it was fascinating. I just bought it because it was on sale at the Strand for $3. And I figured, because this thing is entirely in English, I figure if I like some of the lyrics that Boozy used for this, I mean, assuming I can use these, I don't even know if this is like out of print at this point and that I could use this translation for free. That you have to look up, because some of these English translations, it gets serious. You know, make sure if you're going to do a Fledermaus and you're producing it, make sure that the dialogue is either free from having to pay any royalties, or that you're paying your royalties, because that can really bite you. But if there is some good dialogue in here and if there's some good lyrics, I'm going to use this. So I just figured I'd hold on to it. And then, most importantly, so you know, when you say like you go to the Strand, go to a bookstore, and you see certain librettos, most of those you're probably not going to need. There are a couple of librettos you really should collect though, okay? And this is one of them. The Schirmer libretto for Deflator Mouse, because you know what? They don't print the dialogue in the Schirmer score, like in that regular, you know, orange and red cover, the Schirmer score. They don't print the dialogue. All the dialogue's in here. Okay, so if you see a libretto for Deflator Mouse, buy it because it's totally useful. I hope that this is illustrating a point here rather than me just going off on a tangent. Is that when you're talking about which score should I buy, which one is the best, not necessarily a clear question. I'm going to get into this later in the video where I kind of tier stuff, especially for very specific shows, because there are certain ones, like when you're talking about Puccini and Verdi and things like that, where, yeah, there's a certain way to look at like why you should buy certain things. But we're going to get to that when we tier these things. I just want to kind of put it out as a blanket statement of don't hate on other editions, because other editions have things that are useful to them as well, especially like you could think you have the superior edition and then you do a show and they tell you, oh, sorry, we're using this edition, so you're going to have to spend extra money. That's kind of why I just want to get out of this section. I hope that this has been useful, but let's move on to the next question. All right, so guys, this next section is going to be pretty quick. This is more of a tech question from Amanda Lynn, but it's also kind of funny, so I wanted to read it. Amanda Lynn, I'm not making fun of you. I just think that the way you phrased this, especially at the end, is kind of cute. So I often have to buy a cheaper score or use IMSLP in order to start the learning. For anyone who's not in the know, IMSLP is the Petrucci Music Library. It's all digitized. We'll talk about that in a second. But some editions aren't online for digital purchase either, which is frustrating. Unless there's a better site to get digital copies, especially for people who use iPads and ditch the physical copy, I like to touch my score, read my score, hug my score to sleep. Well, I'm not making any judgments on you, Amanda Lynn, because as you can see, I have many judgments about how I feel about physical scores myself, so I feel you. But as a question for those who want to start doing digital, now, first of all, this my iPad that I have, right? It's been a godsend for me, especially for like smaller gigs. During the pandemic, I have used my iPad like so frequently for like the random church gigs I get, for the little like singing projects that people send me, right? Because it's all right there. And personally, I use Fourscore. I haven't used any other products. If there's anyone who's watching this who has like a product that's like a PDF reader for music, contact me and I will do a product review for you and give you my real opinion about it. But especially when she talks about IMSLP. So IMSLP is super useful, but there's something that I kind of want to explain to everybody about IMSLP. So it's useful, but you have to know how to use it, right? So there are certain scores where there have been many, many printings of the opera. So like, for example, there have been many printings of like a Verdi opera, right? There have been not so many printings of certain French operas, okay? So for example, if you go on and you're doing, let's take like Cendrillon's like a really great example of this, like, or just really most Massenet operas. The Massenet operas, there haven't been a whole lot of plates of them, except maybe for like Manon, right? Only because it's been done frequently enough where there have been other editions made, like, you know, the Schirmer plates and whatever, right? Which really are just copies of other plates that have been put into public domain. But one of the things to remember is that these IMSLP plates, you have to look at the fine details of when that edition was published, okay? Might have to just do with like how the typesetting might be. Might have to do with like, you know, if it's after a certain date. If it's newer, it might not even be in public domain. And that kind of might be a copyright issue. So you have to look out for that too. But IMSLP is definitely a useful tool. IMSLP has its own reader app now. I don't know if you guys know that, for the App Store, and I think it's also on Android. Check that out. Totally worth looking into. I use it every now and again, but pretty much if I need something, I create a PDF. I go on a regular computer, I print a PDF from IMSLP, and then I upload it to Fourscore. It's a kind of circuitous, but I get a lot more out of it having it on my Fourscore, because you need the internet to read IMSLP. I think unless you have a subscription, and then like if you have a subscription, you can do like download, keep it offline kind of situation. The last one I want to mention is Encoda. Okay, I don't know if many people know about Encoda. Maybe I'll link to it in the bottom here. Encoda is the result of work with a publishing group. Okay, this publishing group includes like Boozy and Hawkes, Bärenreiter, I think Edition Peters, maybe. Sikorsky is definitely one of them. Sikorsky is like is a Russian publisher. All of these libraries, and these are not public domain works, these are things that are in these publishers' libraries, are now being scanned to be online. The only problem with Encoda, which, I mean, it's not really a problem, but, you know, for those of us who kind of believe the internet should be free, is that the music is on their app and is not separate. Like, you can't, I think you could have it online and like have it offline to use if you get a subscription, but you can't download it to PDF and then use it home. It doesn't work that way. All right. And for anyone who wants to try to attempt that, there is no way. As far as I know, it's like all proprietary, so it's not worth trying. But it's definitely useful if you want to pay for the subscription. Honestly, when I'm a student again coming up, hopefully, who knows, but if I'm a student again, I'm going to probably try to get a student subscription and then see like what this thing's all about. So those are some digital tips, some digital resources for you to know about. Let's tackle our next question, which might be a little bit more detailed than this. All right, guys. So next up I have here, so when a singer or a young artist is beginning their rep journey and putting roles in their back pocket, how do we know what the standard scores are and why? Is it beneficial for us to purchase what we can afford at the time or to save pennies for something very expensive? And if you don't have the time to save on rent, between which company prints can we choose from? Oh, okay, to select the next best thing. Okay, so I think I'm kind of getting the gist of the question here, and where I'm going with this is it worth it to buy reprints? Should you save up for the real thing? Okay, so first off, there are certain shows where it's worth it to have the original score, like the I guess the correct score, because some of them are done so frequently that you might as well just buy it now. But my real philosophy, guys, is always keep your eyes open, and when you see something used, buy it. I get that some people, they just want an absolutely clean copy, put whatever they want in it, but guys, I did not build all of this by buying everything new. First of all, I think that you know, it has a little bit more character being used, and I also very much appreciate the work of everyone that's come before me, and I feel like that's kind of very evident in the stuff I have behind me. But it's just expensive. Like, to be totally honest, I mean, I get it. You know, if you're doing Rigoletto, like, buy the Ricordi, right? You know, the hardcover or the soft, it doesn't matter. There's that newer edition of Rigoletto. You could even buy the critical if you really want to, right? But I think the point is that when you're doing these shows, you should not be killing yourself to try to get the score. I've never understood the idea that people are spending, you know, 30-40 bucks on like a Rigoletto score. You know, I have my red hardback that I use. I don't think I paid more than 10 or 15 bucks, and I bought it from somebody who sells scores like me, who was just selling them cheap, wanted to get rid of them, which is kind of why when I sell stuff on the Singer's Toolbox Marketplace, why I sell everything cheap, is because that's how I got all of this, and I want to be able to help you guys be able to do what I did here, okay? Now, granted, a lot of this buying comes with a lot of research, being able to know, you know, which composers were with which publishing companies and things like that. That's all just pure research. But I want to go back to an earlier point that I talked about here, which was ask your colleagues, because a lot of singers know a whole lot more than you do, and, you know, make friends. They're going to help you if you ask. A lot of people like being asked what they know, you know, and to like share their expertise. So, for example, for me, I knew nothing getting started. I mean, my very first Puccini opera was at 19. I did Men I'm a Butterfly, and they needed a guy for, what was it, Bleecker Street Opera, to do the Imperial Commissioner and Yakuside, right? I came in with a Schirmer score. I don't even know. I think I have my original Butterfly Schirmer floating around somewhere. It's stuffed in there somewhere. Yeah, they didn't tell me to get any other score. I think that we just all worked with whatever we had at that point. But I learned by talking to the Pinkerton, who was Ben Sloman, incredible guy, incredible tenor, incredible guy, and all of the other guys in the cast that I talked to, and all the other women in the cast that I talked to, that told me, oh, no, there's a lot of editorial mistakes with that score. Actually, it might have even been Lloyd Areola. I think he was playing on that. For anyone who knows Lloyd, you know, rest in peace, man, I miss you. But I think he was the one that told me that there were like many mistakes in the Schirmer score. It's kind of that's just a running joke. Like, that, the butterfly score for Schirmer is like, it's good to have because it's a score, you can follow it, but there are like so many little things here and there that when you really get into the weeds, there's problems with it, right? I'll probably bring that back up when we talk about like the tier system, because I'm going to do a little tier system segment like right after this. But I do want to give you a couple of examples of things where you can buy the reprint, and it's totally okay to buy the reprint. My best example of this, guys, is actually for like Verdi operas, like Verdi operas that are not done as often, okay? These are two that I still have in my collection because I have not been able to find a cheap copy of the Ricordi score for yet. But I have a copy of Oberto, Conte di San Bonifacio. Okay. Cool opera. I think this is Verdi's first opera, actually. This is a reprint, right? Bellwin Mills reprint. But if you notice, guys, when you look in here, it's all the Italian. It's Italian only. And you know why? Because this is one of the Ricordi plates. Like, these Bellwin Mills got the plates, and I think that they actually, they had permission, like they were one of the people who reprinted for Ricordi, because there are a bunch of Bellwin Mills, even like red hardbacks for Ricordi, that were kind of like published by Bellwin Mills, but under the auspices of Ricordi, but then they have like English underneath. These ones are just straight up like the plates, like these are only Italian, these are Ricordi plates. When you can find these and you make sure that there's Italian in them, they're just as good as having a Ricordi pretty much. Little differences here and there, but I mean like nothing so blatantly bad that you shouldn't have this, okay? The other one also is Un giorno di regno, or Il finto Stanislao. Again, an early one. I think this is Verdi's third opera. Correct me in the comments. But yeah, look, same thing. Italian only. Everything is clean. There's no like smudging or anything like that. I mean, granted, when you buy these things, like check it out and make sure that it's a good copy. But again, like, buy the reprint. Not killing you to buy the reprint. The only other example I want to show you, and this is kind of like goes into a pattern that's been happening with the score halls. So I have a problem. I love buying Russian music, because Russian music is notoriously hard to find and is very expensive. But how I got the bug, though, was I had this incredible voice teacher in my undergraduate, Boris Lushin. He taught this insane Russian lit class where, like, anyone who took that Russian lit class will tell you that it was, you learned so much, not just from the Russian diction, but also from the literature. The man was a walking encyclopedia, and really, so is Madame Sarov. I mean, between the two of them, like, so much information on Russian. Now, when you want to buy these Russian operas, there is an option for you to buy these. I don't suggest this for Eugene Onegin, though, so that's like a whole other story, because that's like popular enough now where you really kind of need the right score, which can be one of two things, and I'll talk about that in like the tier list. I think I might have both of the ones that you usually use. But a good example of a Russian score where you can buy the reprint is, say, something like Mussorgsky's Kovanshina, okay? If you've never heard of this brand before, if this is brand new to you, this publisher, Elebron, man, the stuff that Elebron does for Russian is just like, if you're into Russian art song, look at Elebron. Because some of the reprints, I even had Dr. Lushin tell me once, whose was it? The Rimsky-Korsakov. If you want to sing Rimsky-Korsakov art songs, get the Elebron. I mean, he literally looked at it and was my copy that I got in, and he was like, I'm fairly certain that this is a reprint of the Urtext edition from the Russian, and Elebron somehow got their hands on it and reprinted it. So Elebron is useful. Don't throw these out. I mean, some of them, might not be as useful. Like if you get like a Mozart score that's an Elebron, yeah, sure. But like the Russian scores that are Elebron, this is literally a reprint of the original plates, Russian only. Okay, so Elebron's totally worth it for the Russian music. But just so that you know what this actually looks like, that was the reprint. That was the reprint of this. This is the original Kovanshina score. Okay, I don't even know how this dust jacket is still like, you know, in one piece, but this is a Soviet copy actually of the Kavanchina. But look, guys, same plates. If you were to hold these up next to each other, you will find they are literally the same plates. Okay, so I hope that kind of helps the question. But like, again, how do you know how to buy these things? Talk to people. Like, you know, you can Google stuff until the cows come home, but unless you have that thread of information from somebody else to like help you find these scores, to just ask a knowledgeable friend, ask me, I will tell you what I think the ideal score edition is. But yeah, talk to people. You can't live in a void. You can't just like Google everything. You have to talk to people. Maybe that's not exactly the answer that you're looking for, because I could just ramble on about this for another 20 minutes. But yeah, I hope that helps. Okay, guys, so the next section I have here is about that tier list thing that we were talking about in the last section. All that Amanda Lynn writes here is can you give kind of like a tier system for scores? You know, top tier is like blah, blah, blah. Second tier are these guys. Third tier are these, but if you can avoid buying them, then do it. If not, then do your best. So let's just go through really quick, because I kind of think I know where this question is leading ultimately. But let's look at some do's and some don'ts and some gray area. There's a whole lot of gray area, okay? First off, we're going to talk about Mozart. Before we talk about Mozart, I do want to mention I want to do ultimately a longer stretch of videos where I feature just one composer and I talk about their works and I show off the scores, and then we can talk about different editions and how they work. But Mozart's kind of a thorn in the side for a lot of people, just because, you know, there's all these different editions, and do I really need to buy the Bärenreiter and all this kind of stuff? Okay. First off, I'm going to give you the answer to that question. Do I really need to buy the Bärenreiter? Well, a lot of these answers are just going to be like, it depends. But the real answer is, if you're going to be doing this professionally, the standard is starting to change over to Bärenreiter. You're going to get a whole bunch of different answers from different people. Like pianists don't really like Bärenreiter, right? Pianists would prefer to just play out of a Schirmer or even maybe a Ricordi. But I'm going to give you a good example of this. So the opera that I chose is Così fan tutte. Okay? Così. 3 of the major scores that you can use for this opera. Okay, you got your Schirmer, you got your Ricordi, you got your Bärenreiter. Do I really need all 3 of these? My answer is, like, kinda yeah, but for different reasons. Really quick, so like, you know, tier list. Obviously, look, Bärenreiter Blue is gonna like win out every day. Okay, first off, if I were you, if you can avoid it, try not paying full price for these Bärenreiters. I mean, you could find them on eBay and you're not going to pay full price. I think the only reason I have this Così is because I ended up getting it like in a big lot sale, which, by the way, lot sales are your friends. I'm telling you this and I'm going to regret it, because I'm constantly like looking out for these giganto lot sales on eBay, but lot sales are your friend. Sometimes there's going to be a whole bunch of useless crap in that lot, but like 2 or 3 scores that are super expensive, but then you're getting them cheap, kind of makes it worth it. And then you can just sell off the ones and literally the scores pay for themselves, right? But pretty sure I got this in a lot sale. This is awesome because even though there's German in this one as well, this is kind of the gold standard right now for conductors and directors. Okay, so yes, tier list, you know, Bärenreiter Blue's gonna win. All right, though caveat: be careful which edition of Bärenreiter you buy. Now, I'm not gonna go through this collection and pull it out, but I actually had a really great conversation with Susan Morton about this. And you run into all sorts of problems when you go for Handel operas and Bärenreiters, because there are certain editions, even fairly recently, that have different plate numbers. Okay? That's because every couple of years, Bärenreiter and its infinite wisdom to make more money, yay or boo capitalism, however you look at it, puts out a new edition of these guys. And sometimes it's even to the point where you have a plate number and then it says A, B, C, or D, or whatever, right? I could go on about this. Susan could go on about this. But if you do a Handel opera, make sure you ask the company what plate number that Handel opera is, because you're going to waste a whole lot of money, and then you're going to find out that you have the wrong edition of even the Bärenreiter. Okay, so that's a little pro tip there. When you're working with a company, make sure they tell you what the plate number is, very specifically, even down to the letter at the end of the plate. So we just went through Bärenreiter. So that's your first tier, right? Your second tier is really like this Ricordi. Now, I know some people look weird at the Mozart Ricordis, but like personally though, if they're not having a preference on what score they want, I go with these Ricordis because you know what? They're easy to read. They are fully Italian only, right? So I've even been in some productions where they prefer to use the Italian only because, you know, they have like complex stage direction that they want to write in or something, you know. So it's kind of worth it. If you find this cheap, pick it up. If you don't, it's okay. But I like this because, you know, if somebody asked me to read Ferrando, which I'm not really singing anymore, but if someone were to ask me to read it just for a rehearsal, I wouldn't grab my Bärenreiter. I would bring this too, because this is a lot easier to read than the Bärenreiter. The next tier down, though not wholly useless, is the Schirmer for the Così fan tutte. Now, guys, when it comes to Mozart, you know, there are the serious operas and there are the comedies, right? There are certain Mozart operas that are done in English. It's a thing. Some people like to fight me on this, but like I have seen certain productions, especially summer productions, when they're trying to do it to like draw families in or just to like draw people in with the comedy of the Mozart show. They do it in English. And where do you think they're getting the English translation from this? They're getting it from the Schirmer. Okay? So definitely worth it. I've even done, you know, cozy shows where they wanted to cut down the recit entirely and make it like musical numbers and then like spoken dialogues, and then they'll just take the spoken dialogue like out of the recits, right? So kind of worth holding on to. Find a copy, find an older copy, and just keep it around just in case. If you want to produce your own Così fan tutte, it might even be worth it. So yeah, definitely worth having. Not totally useless. I mean, I'm not really, you know, look, I'm not going to tell you that there's any score that is absolutely completely useless. I mean, maybe except for some of those Elebron scores where it's like a standard rep opera and then there's 4 different languages underneath. That's pretty useless. Okay, I amend my statement. Those Elebrons that are standard rep operas that have 4 languages underneath, those are pretty useless. But then you can't really dismiss the whole publisher out of hand, right? Because they do those Russian scores and they're incredible. So yeah, it all comes down to personal taste. Other tier list things, when you're talking about like, a question I get all the time, how do you say it? Jennifer or Genufa or something like that, right? Some people ask me like, okay, if I want to get that score, do I get the Dover edition or do I save up for the original Czech edition? First off, you're going to want to know what publisher you're getting this Czech edition from. I think there's only like 1 or 2 different people that publish it. Actually, is that it like right behind me here? Oh, yeah. Look at that. That's the score right here. I'm not going to pull it out. But this score right here, there's like a Czech edition of it. I think I might even have that Czech edition somewhere in here. But this one is the Universal edition, or I think it might be Universal in the German. But these ones are made so that they have like the Czech on the top and then the German on the bottom, I believe. Good things to know about. But like, again, guys, I think I only found out about that kind of score because I talked to somebody. And then I happened to find it, I think in like a lot sale. I was selling for somebody and then I got it in a lot. So again, talk to people, but tier list, nothing is wholly useless. So sorry, I'm not gonna tell you that, except for those Elebrons that I mentioned. That's kind of useless. But the tier that you're looking for, the upper tier stuff, is really just going to come from what the company tells you to buy and who you talk to, as far as like what is considered the best, and then go forth on eBay and online and try to find the cheapest copy of it. I will never recommend buying it brand new and spending $70, $80, $90 on something. Even like some of the Britons, like the Britons behind me over here, you can find those Britons for far cheaper than like $100 a score. I mean, look, it's just luck and everything, but it's worth kind of first knowing what you're looking for and then keeping your eyes open for when you see it. Sorry if I'm rambling, but I hope that there's at least something useful in this little tier rant on sheet music. All right, last one from Amanda Lynn here. On collections for historical preservation, some scores are no longer in print, but man, some of those older editions are important historically. Or if someone needs it for research or for to revamp a revival. Kind of like, just a lot of stuff here, not necessarily a question, but I'm getting the gist here. So about collecting scores that are historically significant, or just older scores that seem like they're falling apart and then they end up, being something useful. So I want to kind of tell two different stories here. One about a show that's kind of contemporary and that I found randomly, and another about a score where I was doing the show and then I was kind of determined to hunt this thing down, and then I found it. So first off, I went to the Strand. Oh man, couple of summers ago. It might have been like 2014 or 2015. Yeah, something around then. And I was in the Strand, and this was before like the pickings started getting kind of slim over at the Strand, and I hit a mother load. Like half of the Sondheim repertoire all lined up next to each other. They were all like $10 to $15 a score. I also found Regina by Mark Blitzstein, and I found Vanessa, like all next to each other, like Samuel Barber's Vanessa, all next to each other. Now, I was just like, man, I would be an idiot if I didn't buy these right now. So, I mean, I don't think I've ever spent that much at the Strand before. It might have been, I'm almost embarrassed to say I probably spent about $250 that day. But I was also teaching at the time, and I wasn't starving, so I was able to afford it. But I thought, oh, this is all for fun. I'm never going to use these scores. Several years after that, Bronx Opera, with Ben Spearman and Michael Spearman, were like, we're going to do Regina. And I was like, holy crap, I have this score. It's time for me to use it. So, I ended up buying this score, guys, and this is like pretty rare. I mean, at this point, the only time you're going to find this is either randomly on eBay, randomly in a bookstore, or when you do it, it's all rental material, right? But this I found as an original copy. Now, personally, for me, this was like an original. Like I actually cut the binding off and then had these the two cover pieces laminated, because this score was not really made for heavy use. The one that I bought, it was kind of falling apart. And I tried using it as long as I could in the rehearsal process, and then I wanted to make sure that this thing did not die, so I did what I could to try to preserve it. But yeah, instance of just like sometimes you see it and you just have to jump on it if you can afford it, or like find a way to like get what you need when you see stuff laying around that you know might potentially be useful. So yeah, when you see this stuff, it kind of gets added to the list of when you see it, try to buy it, because you never know when it's going to be useful. By the way, amazing show. And actually, kind of also brings me to a point. When you buy these historical shows or these contemporary shows and you buy them on a whim, so maybe this is just me and maybe this is all pseudoscience, right? But sometimes when a regional company ends up like reviving a show, right? Now, I'm not on the other side of the table, so I don't know what thought process goes into this, but I found that when certain small companies, like really small companies, start doing certain shows, for some reason it almost seems like someone's reading the tea leaves somewhere. And then have you ever had that happen where like suddenly all of these productions just start popping up? Like I remember a year where I did an Iolanta, like the Tchaikovsky Iolanta, and then it seemed like everybody was doing Iolanta. Or when I did Regina with Bronx Opera, and then I think there were like 2 other productions of Regina being done that year. Stuff like that happens, guys. And, you know, it's really kind of reading the winds, reading the tea leaves, and sometimes you happen upon a score and you happen to have it. But it's definitely worth looking through what the seasons are for these companies and seeing what shows are trending to like what should you spend your money on, right? And if you find it cheap in the moment, buy it rather than like waiting and paying extra money. The other story I want to tell you guys is doing a show with Amore Opera, with Nathan, God rest his soul. He really wanted to do first L'Étoile du Nord. That's the Meyer beer, right? Couldn't get the score for it, or I think he was having problems getting the conductor score for it. I'm not really sure what the story is, but he ended up doing Dinora, or Le Pardon de Ploemel. So I was like fascinated just with the idea of finding this score. And I was on abebooks.com, and lo and behold, in some bookstore in France, and guys, this was pre-COVID, so like on ABE Books now, some of these shipping rates are just ridiculous. But like a couple of years ago, I mean, book rate was still a thing, and so the shipping rate from France really wasn't that bad. I think it was almost what shipping rate is in the U.S., like, you know, $5 to $7 or something. And I think I only paid like $20 or $30 for this. But guys, this is like one of the original editions of. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, this is one of the original prints, I think, of Le Pardon de Ploemel. So it's worth doing the research, guys. Who knows if this opera is going to be done anytime soon. I'm not even really sure if I could sing this tenor roll or if I'd want to again. It was really fun, but I personally think that my colleague Juan did it a whole lot better than I did it. But the show is so cool. If you've never seen Dinora, like, think about checking it out. I think like Amore might have a recording floating around somewhere, but especially for the sopranos, because doing the shadow song is just like incredible. But yeah, no, that's my story as far as like historical scores and all of that. They're really fun to collect. Look on eBay for them, or ABE Books. You can fall down a whole rabbit hole, but sometimes people just don't straight up know what they have. There are a lot of times where you can find like an older, like something that's bound in an edition like this, and it turns out to be something extremely valuable. Like, I don't know, like a Gounod's Faust or something like that, right? Or a Manon. But it's still perfectly serviceable. You can use it. I used this score for the show that I did. But yeah, you just have to be careful what you're buying. Check out the condition, look at the pictures, make sure the binding's not falling apart, and if you're not willing to repair the binding, then maybe like look over it. But it's a fun hobby and could reap dividends. That's kind of really all I have to say on that, because I'm rambling at this point. Honestly, guys, these videos, I'm just throwing a whole lot at the wall here, and I'm hoping that there are some kernels of wisdom in there. But I hope that this kind of helps for the historical thing, because I found a lot of joy in doing it. And there are some certain advantages for when people bring shows back, that like you happen to have the score and you might be the person who like saves the day because you got to copy certain parts out of it because someone's score is missing a part or something, you know? So just things to think about. All right, guys, final thoughts and conclusions. So look, this is a really long video. Use the timestamps to help you. but there's so much information, and this is why this video alone is probably going to spawn like several ideas for other videos in the future for this channel. But I really hope this was a basic, super basic overview, even though this video is probably going to be like 40 or 45 minutes long or something. But I'm hoping that this is going to be a super basic primer for those college students looking to buy more scores, for those people post-COVID trying to get more stuff, more music and just materials together in order to be ready for the post-pandemic opera world. This is a lot to take in, and look at it section by section, see if you get anything out of it. I literally, like I said at the end of the last section, I just kind of took a whole bunch of my thoughts and threw it against a wall. So I hope that this was all useful. If you guys like the stuff that I'm doing here, make sure that you subscribe in the bottom. Leave a like to make sure that the algorithm works in the favor of this channel. If you have comments, if you have questions, put them in the bottom there. I would love to help answer your questions. I also have that Discord. That's kind of so that we can all help each other out, create a little community. It doesn't really seem like it's gaining much traction, but if people are interested, I mean, let's start some conversations. I am going to be starting to branch out on this channel a little bit more, maybe do some on-location stuff, talk about some real tools of the trade and not just sheet music, help people who are just trying to get a little bit more tech information under their belts for this post-COVID world, helping them with self-production. We'll talk about all that stuff, but guys, look forward to some things that are coming out. I have a whole bunch of stuff in the pipeline, but I will see you on the next episode of The Singer's Toolbox.